Mr. Rohit Vyas, our senior political commentator, welcome again to ITV Gold. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Of course, we have to have you here because so much is happening in the nation and we're really trying to understand the politics of it all. So let's begin today looking at what President-elect Biden is doing. He has announced his healthcare team, those main key members who are going to lead the coronavirus pandemic task force, key members that are truly going to try to handle this pandemic. What are your initial thoughts about it? And before you answer that, I want to go over what President-elect Joe Biden basically stated as an agenda for handling coronavirus. He wants to distribute 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days after becoming the president. He wants a mask mandate for 100 days after becoming the president. And he also wants most schools to be open if Congress will provide funds. Do you think it's doable, what he's saying?
Yeah, it's all doable. He doesn't want a mask mandate, by the way. He's just made a request to Americans that from the day he is sworn in, he is requesting the American population to please mask up for 100 days and no more than 100 days. And he says it's to get us over this period, which is going to be a very rough period until everyone starts to get vaccinated on schedule. As to his team, the health team he has announced is superb. The health secretary is someone we're going to have to look at a bit more closely because he is California's attorney general who has been dealing with a lot of the Trump matters or going after the Trump campaign and Trump himself on various issues in the state of California. As to the other members of the team, they're all scientists, they're all professionals. You know Dr. Vivek Murthy, an Indian American, a very, very highly qualified individual from the medical profession, who's back in the role of Surgeon General. You have Dr. Anthony Fauci, who President-elect Biden requested to stay on with him and is now going to be his chief medical advisor for COVID-19, and probably will be retained for many, many other issues as well in the medical team. So a very good team as far as I can see. I think President-elect Joe Biden has been very systematic, very careful in the kinds of people he's been appointing. His intended defense secretary, also a good choice, someone he has known personally for many, many years, namely when he was vice president. And when the lieutenant general in question was accepting the handover in Iraq and was responsible for a lot happening in that region. The only thing is he's going to need an exemption because you are not supposed to be serving as a civilian defense secretary unless you've gone past 7 years of having been retired from the Army or the Armed Forces. For him, it's been, I think, about 4 years or even less. And so he's going to need an exemption, which is not unusual. That happened in the case of President Trump's defense secretary choice. He was given an exemption by the Senate, and it should happen in this case, but it could be contentious. Simply because the Senate majority, as of now, is in the hands of the Republicans, so they can tend to be difficult with confirming this choice of a defense secretary. But of course, it's historic because it's the first African American, the first Black American defense secretary, and a very, very significant choice in that respect.
In his nomination, President-elect Joe Biden has a lot of, diverse individuals, but he's focusing on first of many. Could you explain to us why you think he's focused so much on first of many? Is it his way of showing inclusivity and dignity for all?
It's his way of understanding America, I think, better than most politicians have understood America. I think Joe Biden has worked with so many different people from so many different ethnic backgrounds, so many different colors, if you want to use that term. He knows everybody, white, black, brown, from wherever they are. He's dealt with so many folks on the international stage. So he understands ethnic backgrounds. He understands different types of cultures. He understands the different types of people. And therefore, he understands America because America is a melting pot of all these various cultures, these various ethnic backgrounds, these various people. He understands America, I think, like no other leader. And he's showing that in his selections of individuals to represent the diversity of the country. This is a highly diverse nation, a highly respected nation because of its diversity, and therefore he wants to show that whoever he has in the cabinet, his cabinet, will reflect America.
Yes, definitely. You know, you were talking about last time when we were here, we were talking about the nominations and how much they could be confirmed from the last cabinet we were discussing. When you're looking at this team, how difficult do you think these nominations are going to be in terms of, you know, getting confirmed? Which ones do you think are easier?
Yeah, some of them, well, I think Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, is a shoo-in. She has widespread bipartisan support. There will be many others, including Dr. Vivek Murthy, who will be face no problems whatsoever in being, confirmed as the Surgeon General. I think there are many who are going to do fairly well. There will be a couple of them. One of them will be the Health Secretary elect. I mean, nominated the Health Secretary nominee. I think will face a contentious confirmation process because of his having taken a hard line on Donald Trump. So I think he will face difficulty. The Lieutenant General, who is Biden's choice for Defense Secretary, will probably face a contentious confirmation. Most of the others, I don't think so as of yet. Now, all of this, don't forget, also depends upon the two runoffs that we have coming up in the first week of January in Georgia. And that could shift the balance of the Senate. If that happens, there'll be less of a contentious race, but there's also the problem that Joe Biden faces within the Democratic Party itself. And that's those who lean very far left, who are not going to be with his standing by his moderate trends or his middle of the road take, as it were. So it's not guaranteed by any means that you'd find a whole bunch of Democratic senators either willing to confirm some of these nominees. So he does face an uphill task. But as I've said, the overriding benefit to the benefit of Joe Biden is the fact that he is so good at reaching out across the aisle to so many people. He has that experience. He personally knows so many of these folks. He knows Mitch McConnell very well. They know each other very well. They do talk to each other. And that would be a key factor in getting these nominations through successfully.
Yes, definitely. You know, when you're looking at the nomination, I have to ask you, giving Dr. Anthony Fauci such a respected role, do you think he's made it clear that he is going to follow science and scientists above anything else when it comes to coronavirus?
Yes, he said that himself. He has said we're going to follow the science, and they're doing that. In fact, for their inauguration, we have reports out today from the head of the the inaugural committee, that's Representative James Clyburn, who has already said, he's the House Majority Leader, by the way, and House Majority Whip. And he announced today that the inauguration, for instance, is going to be 80% virtual.
Right.
Okay, now why is that? It's because Joe Biden believes in the science. The science says we better mask up, we better not be congregating together in public spaces, we better avoid that. Even if you're masked up, do not get together in public spaces in such huge numbers because the risk of spreading the pandemic is more so. And so that shows you that he's absolutely ready to follow the science and scientists. And he is not going to interfere, and he will not allow any of his political allies to interfere with the process of science, which is a very good sign for science. Scientists should be applauding this, and I'm sure they are, because they know that Joe Biden's going to leave them alone to their expertise. And his invitation to Anthony Fauci to come on board and continue with him as his chief medical advisor is an illustration of that fact. He has enormous respect for Dr. Fauci. Yeah. He has said so all along, and he has now shown it even further. And Dr. Fauci, at least for the longest time, at least for the first few months of this crisis we're in, was probably the most popular man in America. Yeah. So whether they were Trump supporters or anti-Trump people, Dr. Fauci was the one person who seemed to be the unifier for everyone. And because he was the scientist that came into everyone's homes, into their living rooms, from the broadcasts at the White House during the Corona Task Force hearing. And I think it was a great choice. And I think it's reflective of Vice President-elect Biden's belief in science, yes.
Yes, Yes, and Dr. Fauci also has served for several administrations, both for Republican and Democratic presidents. So I think it's very interesting to see him have so much faith in him, and we hope the best for that.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
Dr. Fauci goes all the way back to President Reagan.
Yeah.
It's a long time. He's been around a long time, yeah.
Yes, he's been trusted because he follows the science, and that's exactly what we need. Meanwhile, President Trump continues not to concede, and these lawsuits still are filing across the nation. My question to you is, could anything at this point change what's happening with these lawsuits, or are we just going to continuously see these until January 20th?
Yeah, probably going to see them continuously till January 20th. It will not change the outcome. In fact, the electors are, as we speak, being finalized. They're being nominated by each of the states, and the electorals are going to go voting the way their states voted, which means they will give 307 electoral college votes to Joe Biden, giving him the presidency, and the remainder going to Donald Trump, meaning he loses the presidency. And so he can continue. He can continue his legal options as long as he wants to, as long as he can afford them. Up to the 20th of January, he has the transition team. He has the Republican Party that has funds to support such an effort. After the 20th of January, it'll be up to the Republican Party and whoever has been funding this effort, the legal effort, to say, yeah, we'll continue, or it's a waste of money, forget about it, we won't do it anymore. I'm sure then Donald Trump will find other avenues to discredit the election process and to continue his assertion to say that he won without any fact whatsoever, without any kind of proof whatsoever, and he will continue to allege irregularities. The long-term problem with this is it's undermining American democracy within America itself. I mean, outside the rest of the world could look at us and laugh or still admire us and say, well, you still made it, you had an election, and despite all this, it's all good. So there are two ways to look at it. But as far as we in the United States go, it could end up, our own underestimating or compromising our own belief in our own democratic system. That's the danger of prolonging this like this. But he is within his rights not to concede. If he doesn't wish to concede, he does not have to. I mean, that's just a process. That's an honored, time-honored thing where you concede and you say, okay, I'm done. You're the president, we'll go ahead. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says that you must concede. There is nothing that says that. It's just a tradition. It's accepted by the populace, right, but he can continue whatever he wants to.
Definitely. One of the biggest proponents of President Donald Trump's alleged, call for election fraud across the nation is Rudy Giuliani, President Trump's lawyer as well, and former mayor of New York City. He right now has contracted COVID-19, and he was holding many rallies, interacting with public, going to events completely without a mask. What kind of a message is this sort of, portraying when you're looking at President Donald Trump and what's happening to Rudy Giuliani and the kind of narrative that they are trying to present or promote? What do we make of all of that?
Well, there's the proof of the pudding itself is that they didn't wear masks. They contracted the virus and they proved science correct. Lucky for President Trump, he got a mild form of it. And it seems from what we're hearing, the reports on Rudy Giuliani's health, that he too has a mild form of COVID-19. And, good for him. Nobody wishes anyone ill, and it's a good thing. But of course, this is exactly the point. The point is that you go out, you don't wear masks, and you contract the virus. And the thing is, it's an insidious virus. It's a virus that does not care about who you are, how powerful you are, whether you're a top political leader or whether you're a small person. This virus doesn't see the difference. It's going to attack you. In some cases, it will ravage your system, leading, unfortunately, to death. In other instances, it will ravage your system, leave you with long-term terrible effects. And in yet other instances, it will not ravage you at all. It'll pass right through you and do nothing. The risk is, if you want to find out, you indulge in risky behavior. And that's all they've done is illustrated what the scientists have been saying.
Today President Donald Trump will be signing an executive order, or maybe by the time this show is on air, he's already signed the executive order to prioritize Americans when it comes to the vaccine. However, he's downplayed the coronavirus several times during this year. My question to you is, do you think he's politicizing coronavirus right now by signing this executive order? Will that really help anybody in that sense?
No, I don't think so. I think because the drug companies have already decided that they will prioritize Americans.
Right.
There's been the report out today as well about the Pfizer drug, the Pfizer BioNTech drug, the most successful one, the one that's been already introduced in England now, in the UK. There were reports that the US government, the White House itself, had not put in a request for enough of those doses, even though Pfizer asked how much should they set aside for the US, and they weren't given that number. And so Pfizer has already given a certain number only to the U.S. population and has begun distributing the rest of the world. But they did come in to ask the United States first. So the messages are very mixed, obviously, from the White House. But it's quite evident to me that the pharma companies would prioritize the United States, especially those that are based here, U.S. Pharmaceutical companies. They are going to make sure they first distribute here anyway. There was that vaccine summit, and he did promise to sign this executive order, and it will be signed, and it's probably signed as this show appears on the air, you're right. But the messaging is definitely mixed, and yes, no question about it, it would be political. Because when you say you're signing an executive order to prioritize the U.S. population, at the same time you're going out there and talking about, ignoring the mask warning that the scientists have been sending, the messaging is very clearly mixed.
Many are saying that he's trying to take credit for vaccinations that are coming into the country. Your comments?
He deserves credit for it. President Trump does deserve credit. He did introduce Operation Warp Speed,
right,
and he did promise the American people that there would be a vaccine out by the end of the year. Obviously, as president, you are privy to a lot of advanced information from the scientific world with your scientific team about what's happening as this pandemic was making its way through the global population. I'm sure they had information in advance from the pharma companies, that the pharma companies already had the breakdown of the genetics of this particular virus and were working on a vaccine. But the short answer to your question, he does deserve credit for it. There is no question that it was sped up under this administration, and he does deserve credit, and I would give him credit for the fact that we have a vaccine before the end of the year.
Yeah, we definitely do, and here's to hoping this vaccine saves a lot of people, because we lost too many to this pandemic already. Just talking still about President Trump, one last question. What have you felt about the pardons that he's given, to Michael Flynn? And what insight could you give us about what's happening with these pardons? We keep on hearing all sorts of news. I'd like to see what you have to say about it.
Okay, the pardons are nothing unusual. Presidents do have it within their purvey and their power to issue a pardon to whoever they wish to. The only controversy has been whether a president can pardon himself or herself if a female should assume the office. And the typical law is that you can't judge your own case. It has to be somebody else who judges yourself. So therefore, a pardon would not apply in if a president wanted to pardon himself, for instance. That would go up to the Supreme Court, for sure, to be adjudicated there, whether it would be allowed under the Constitution or not. But a pardon is very much a part of the president's executive authority. He can pardon whoever he wants, doesn't have to give any reasons for it. Does that excuse the person who is pardoned cases coming against them in states, for instance? No. What it does is, whatever you've been convicted for already, especially in federal court, you're pardoned of that. So if you've been sentenced to life, typically a president every year gives pardons to a number of people who've been sentenced to death or life in prison for various crimes, etc. A presidential pardon takes them off the hook and says goodbye, you're okay. It doesn't mean you're not guilty. It doesn't mean you're innocent. All it does is pardon you, says okay, you're forgiven, and you can begin life anew. So that's what it is. It is very important to understand that just because he gave Michael Flynn a pardon, it does not mean Michael Flynn was innocent. He was not. He was proven guilty in court of law and sentenced according to the law of the United States. Okay, so he was guilty, he is guilty. But the pardon simply means his sentence has been commuted, has been cut short, and he is now a free man to begin his life again. Nothing unusual about pardons. It can happen, and I'm expecting a flurry of them. As we speak, some more will definitely be forthcoming.
Did the pardon of Michael Flynn shock you or surprise you?
No,
No.
I was kind of expecting it. No.
Definitely. Let's now talk about the economy since I have you still on the show. My first question to you is, looking at the economic trends, which we always talk about, and we love to get more insight into it. After this incoming administration keeps on putting up their key members and they're showcasing their mandate for the next year, how is the economy impacted by that? And the second question to you following that would be, could you explain to us the chaos that continues to happen with the stimulus package talks? Why can't we still come up with something?
Okay, the latest, to take this last question first. What had happened was there was a bipartisan group of Republicans and Democratic senators
Right.
who came together and worked on a package that they thought would be workable. Now, remember, the Democrats had passed twice in the House bills that were worth about 2.2 to a little more than that. The first bill was somewhere near $3 trillion. The second one was $2.2 trillion. This bipartisan group, and it got stalled in the Senate, obviously. The Senate majority, which is Republican, decided, no, we don't want this. It's too much. We're giving away too much money and leaving future generations of Americans to saddle the debt. That was their reasoning for it. This bipartisan group came up with a $908 billion package, just short of $1 trillion, which will cover the emergency unemployment, the enhanced unemployment for those who are on it. It would extend other benefits, protect, help businesses with grants and things like that. A certain amount of money for states to rescue them from having to rescue so many people and businesses within the different states. And they thought they could use that as a basis to work forward. The sticking point in all of this seems to be the fact to protect businesses from lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits related to COVID-19. They want to give businesses incentive. They want to give people, more money. But the Republicans are contending that we must, in this package, incorporate giving immunity to businesses, from COVID-19 lawsuits, because they expect a flurry of frivolous lawsuits. That's where they stand. The Democrats don't want a complete blanket, protection for those to be protected against, frivolous lawsuits, not frivolous lawsuits, but lawsuits. That's the Democratic side. That's where they're stuck now. In fact, as we speak, those talks might collapse as we speak. They are in danger of further collapse and nothing happening at all because of this one sticking factor. So that's what's happening on that. Otherwise, it was looking very good. The stock market was reacting well. But again, it stalled. The talks have stalled. And this is the big sticking point. Now, I forgot what was your other question that you asked me earlier.
How is the economic trend looking like, post President-elect Biden showcasing a bunch of key members that he wants to be on his team?
I think it'll be good. I think the stock market at least reacted to that immediately. And that's a good sign because I think, especially with Janet Yellen heading Treasury, we expect a lot of stability in the U.S. economy. There's nobody with greater experience perhaps right now than her to have been in the Federal Reserve and then to have, been in various positions, dealing just with money matters concerning the U.S. economy. And her team that's going to be with her is also equally experienced. So I see no problem on that. I think the U.S. economy will continue to expand and do well. I'm one of the optimists. There are many who say it's a bubble. I don't think so. It's not a bubble. We're going to see a lot of good coming out. The vaccine it's a matter of time before everybody gets the vaccines. Once that happens, normalcy should begin to set in. And President Biden is very good at understanding and making the economy work too. As I explained to your viewers the last time, under the Obama administration, when he was vice president, that was his job. One of his key tasks was to make sure that the U.S. economy began to recover and do well, because that was right after the 2008 collapse, financial collapse. And that was Joe Biden who took care of it. So he understands this issue very well. He understands the health issues very well.
Yeah.
The SARS crisis, Ebola crisis, he knows all of it. So really, this country is in very competent hands, and for that matter, the world is in competent hands under President Biden.
Yeah, I like the optimism here. You know, we definitely need that with so much going on. Finally, the topic I want to discuss right now is racial equality. You know, President-elect Biden has basically made it into a three-part, statement where he's focused on the healthcare system, the economic recovery, and the last thing is racial equality. Today, him and Vice President-elect Harris will be meeting with civil rights advocates, black leaders as well, to really discuss what's happening. Where do you think this conversation is going to go? We've seen so much racial unrest this entire year. There are a lot of claims about many things. We still need, more improvement in the police and law enforcement system. We still need more, resources for minority communities. Where do you think this administration is going to go when you're looking at racial equality?
I'm going to give you a guess. Now, this is not published anywhere or thought of anywhere, I think, but I'm coming up with my own guess. I think we're going to start to see civilian advisory boards, in each state coming up. There'll be groups of civilians that will be appointed to boards in each state to advise on law enforcement specifically. I think that's what's going to come out of all of this. Now, you mentioned the civil rights folks meeting with the president-elect and Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect, and that's what's giving me this idea, because I know, having covered Joe Biden in the past, I have not covered Kamala Harris myself, but I have covered Joe Biden for years as a senator, and I know that he likes to hold these meetings and things like this. And now, as president, my guess is you're going to see the appointment, or at least a suggestion that states appoint community boards, as it were, specifically to address the issue of relations between law enforcement and the community at large. This is something I think will help a great deal. In fact, in the past, many years ago, I remember covering it as a reporter. New York City, for instance, did have a civilian advisory committee. I happened to be on one of those way back when things were getting bad and out of town. It's a very useful tool to be able to have representatives from the community that can advise law enforcement, talk to them about cultures, etc. In New Jersey, the state where I live in right now, and where I'm talking to you from, New Jersey, the same thing. I served on a council for both Governor Whitman, a Republican, and Governor McGreevey, a Democrat. And I was in the Asian American Pacific Advisory Council, where we discussed issues like this. This is what we did. We talked about it. And then we would be invited. Many of us would be invited. It was comprised of Indian Americans like myself, Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, African Americans. It was, in fact, headed under Whitman by an African American, Buster Suarez, who was the Secretary of State of New Jersey at the time when I served. And we went to police departments. We would educate them about specific cultures, how to interact with someone if you're arresting them, for instance, what to expect from them, how to behave with them, and how they should behave with you, etc., etc. And these would be very good things. So I suspect President Biden, once he is the president of the United States, will moot this idea. And I'm pretty certain a lot of states will start to want to do it. At least the Democratic states would start to do it. And then you'll see a lot of peace between police and civilians.
Do you see Vice President-elect Harris becoming a major, aspect of getting this racial equality, or perhaps a mobilizer? She is the first woman, and she is the first woman of color to serve in that, position. How much responsibility do you think she has to represent races equally?
She has enormous responsibility, and in fact, she was the Attorney General of California.
Right.
So obviously, she's a law enforcement official. She's a seasoned law enforcement individual herself, and I'm sure she understands these issues far better than anybody else, or as good as anybody else in her same position around the nation. So I think she will have a very key role in overseeing much of this. But I think Joe Biden himself will want his hands on this particular matter, because he's one of his landmarks himself, where he likes to see people get together. He likes to see people love each other. He likes to see everybody get along. And I think, he has faced a lot of criticism from law enforcement. And that may be where Kamala Harris would come in, because she was the Attorney General and therefore oversaw law enforcement herself. So she'll be a useful individual to have to steer law enforcement that have been disenchanted by Joe Biden, in some of his pronouncements before the election. She'd be the one to be sort of bringing them into the fold to get along and figure out what to do to make matters better between law enforcement and civilians of all color.
Finally, my last question to you has to be, again, what is your prediction for the next few weeks? We continue to see so many changes happen on political level and the healthcare level. What are you predicting?
I'm predicting more cabinet announcements. I'm predicting people start to feel a lot better once the vaccines are approved for use here in the United States, which I am expecting, incidentally, by this weekend. I think by the weekend we should see the FDA giving formal approval. They've already said that they have found evidence that Pfizer's drug meets the test, meets everything they say it does, and is a 95% effective vaccine to fight COVID-19 and prevent any infections within the population. So that should start to make people feel better and start to feel good about themselves and about the country. I think we have to keep in the back of our minds the fact that this pandemic has had enormous impact on everyone's stress levels too. And so politics was there to exacerbate the situation, but the pandemic was there to exacerbate the discontent even more. I think once you feel more comfortable that we're going to start leading normal lives again, I think Joe Biden presidency will have a very smooth ride to come.
Well, I hope so too. Thank you so much again for your time. We look forward to having you again on ITV Gold.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.